Welcome back to Epic Airsoft HD. Today we're in Airsoft World to give you a special episode. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be upgrading this Beta Projects Tactical AK. Now I don't know if you remember, but we did an unboxing video a few months back where Echo1 sent us some Modify gear sets and a high-speed piston as well. Those two things are ideal for this particular gun, being of 7mm bearing, so we're going to go ahead and put that into. Also, we were sent some of the Madbull blue hot buckings, hot rubbers. We're also going to install that in this gun, and we're going to, at the end of the episode, take this back out on the range, because of course we did this gun before, which you'll see in the links in the description below, and we're going to compare it just to see the difference that modifying a gun can make. For the upgrades that we're going to do in this gun, it's going to cost us about £100. That's what it cost in UK and US. We'll put that in the links in the description below. So we're going to go ahead, have a look at some of the stuff that we've got in stock, and then we're going to introduce you to Frenchie, who's going to finally modify this gun for us. Alright, so we're here against some of the new stuff that Airsoft World have in stock. These are Chinese made, I think they're ASG actually, Dragunov spring guns. That's one of the newer versions with the weird stock on it, and of course you get your old original version. The spring cocking, so they're good, but they're not awesome like this real sword. We've reviewed this before, but Airsoft World here have put the proper scope on it, and look at that, that is fucking badass. Check that out. Basically it's a real scope, and this is a real Dragunov with airsoft internals in it. You can check out this gun by clicking on that annotation there. It's absolutely fantastic. We're going to revisit this gun with the scope as well and see if we can get it shooting better than we did on the test. So, oh man, just look at the finish on it. Also, I noticed on the floor here is some of the second-hand guns that Airsoft Worlds have here as well. This is actually a friend of mine's MG36, and these are really rare to find. This is the SRC version. 8mm bearings, and you've got this crazy drum mag on it. It looks like a pair of testicles on, but it's pretty awesome, looks pretty neat. So yeah, check it out. Airsoft World, links in the description below. They've got some second-hand stuff here like this. Yeah, we're over here on this part of the section wall now, and there we go, some GMP stuff. Airsoft World don't actually stock GMP stuff, but they'll take in some second-hand things here. This is one of the older versions of a GMP. It's actually a Colt 9mm version of the M733. One of my favourite guns, the M733, because of Gary Gordon and Black Hawk Down. Awesome movie. Even look at the detail on that, that's pretty cool. Some neat stuff in stock here. Stuff they stock though, G&G, SIG range. We've done the ICS stuff before. This stuff looks really good too. Second-hand Masada, grenade launchers, AUGs. Oh, there's all sorts of stuff. You guys have been asking a lot for this TAR-21. We're going to be doing this in about a month's time. I've owned one of these before and didn't have a very good experience with it, so we'll see if Aries has managed to change it. So yeah, another cool gun. Alright, we'll move on to some of the stuff over on that wall. Alright, over on this wall we have some of the WE gas guns that are up here. These are really top line kind of stuff, very unique. Again, we'll be reviewing them in the future. Some of the AKs we saw in the previous episode in which we visited Airsoft World, MP5s, which we did not so long ago. And this is the two-tone guns. Now, I know you US guys and people who don't know what the laws are in the UK are going, oh crap, what is that? Why are they so bright? It's a UK law here. You need to be 18 and over to buy an airsoft gun, but you also have to have what's called a UCARA defense to own a RIF like the one here and the other guns that I just walked past. If you haven't done an airsoft skirmish before, this is what you need to have. I'll take one off the wall so you can see it quickly. There's luminescent green. They have to be a bright colour. Of course, G&G do this blue as well, so they don't have to be too bright, but they have to be obvious that they're not a real firearm. So this is your alternative. They're just the same guns as everyone else, only they're sprayed in a bright colour. Until you can play your 3 games in your 2 months, you have to use one of these, which we'll explain again in another future episode. So let's have a look at the gun itself and we'll introduce you to Frenchie. Okay, this is Frenchie. He's worked in Airsoft World for how many years now?
10 years.
10 years. It's a long time. It's like longer than most people I know have been playing. So, so you've been here since like the day of TM finally. stuff here. Yeah. So long time. This guy's been working on gearboxes for 10 years, so he's really experienced, and that's why we've came along here. Another reason we came along here is, of course, actually, Airsoft World stock the Modify stuff, and you guys are distributors for the UK, yes, which is cool because Echo1 sent us, Brian Holt from Echo1 sent us this stuff. They also do the same thing, they distribute through the US, so it's nice here that we've got a good working relationship with Airsoft World, one of the biggest UK distributors for airsoft guns and parts all over Europe. So we're going to start with the blue hop-up rubber, which I'm a big fan of. Can you tell us more about this one?
As you were saying, the blue rubber from Madbull is one of our favourites, along with, I have to say, G&G's current crop of green hop rubbers, which are exciting.
Yeah, they're really good as well.
We like these because they're soft, they're not too soft, they don't wear excessively, you get good grip, and what we're seeing is low velocities, heavy BBs, great range.
Lots of lift.
Really good consistency
awesome
on those.
stuff. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and put this Modify Ultra Piston in as well, which is a half steel tooth. What's the advantage of that?
The steel tooth is basically reinforcing. The steel teeth on this piston have been placed at the point where the greatest stress is applied to the piston, which is right before it gets released by the sector gear, and obviously we'll cover that when we've got the gearbox apart. It's a compromise. Essentially you're running without the excess weight of the steel because you're half plastic.
Yeah, the nylon zeros.
You basically got the strength where you need it, and like all Modify stuff, it's so well built.
We've also got the Modify gear set, which is an expensive piece of kit, but it's a neat upgrade if you want to spend extra money in your AG getting it reliable. This is a great way to go. Brian sent us over the speed set, and it's of course a smooth style and a 7mm bearings. What's the advantages of that one?
The biggest advantage is that I can just stand here and stroke it gently for a while. I'm serious, John. The engineering on this is quite scary. The big advantages are they don't always fit all gearboxes. It's always good to check precisely that it will fit, but when it goes in so precisely. You get no slop, you get no movement. You've got a gear set that is running entirely in dedicated bearings, so it's really smooth, it's low friction, almost no maintenance. Very difficult to break. I mean, I'm sure somebody will manage, but generally they're pretty hard to break.
Yeah, they're pretty hard.
Lovely upgrade, and it's a real sort of like make your gun go better, last a lot better as well.
It's a reliability thing. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. From a precision engineer's point of view, like myself, the engineering work on it for the price. It's like £60 for a high-speed gear set. That would probably cost, if we were to price a customer for that, you're talking £300, £400 for a gear set of that quality. Yeah. So we're going to try and drop it into this Beta Projects AK. It's basically a SEMA gearbox inside it. So we're going to go ahead and work on that right now.
Let's go and take a gun to bits.
Okay, Frenchie's just taken apart the gun that we showed you, and we're going to have a look at what's inside the gearbox. There's the Modify set that we've already taken out, and as you see, nice and smooth. It's held together by this nice piece of machined steel. So we're going to have a look at the original internals inside this actually SEMA branded gearbox. So quite a few screws to take out and stuff there.
Could be worse.
Could be worse. Be disassembling your display or something, yeah.
Be right. Cute trick time.
Yeah.
Save yourself everything exploding by manually releasing the anti-reverse latch.
Nice, okay.
Air nozzles forward, you've taken as much tension off the spring as you can.
Could you show that to the camera just quickly?
You surely can. I don't know if you can see this, Graeme. The anti-reverse latch on the version 3 box is sitting just there, and we have this dinky little tool made out of a wire coat hanger, and all we do is we reach in above it, grab that and take the tension off. Gearboxes are fond of exploding if you don't do it right anyway, so you save yourself. And the great thing about this is you can also do it through a pistol grip if needs be. Say on a version 2 box, so if you've got a lock gearbox you can do it that way as well. The bit that everyone always forgets on the version 3, it's an incredibly straightforward gearbox, but
that's the bit that stops you getting your finger caught up in gears, right?
Where's life without a bit of excitement?
Yeah.
Look, I started with 5 fingers, now I have 3, and that's what bone looks like. Nah. Biggest problem with version 3 gearbox is the trigger.
Yeah.
It's a great trigger, lovely. Do not allow it to jump out of the gearbox, because it is absolute mother to get back in if it decides it doesn't want to go in. and the quality of Chinese screws can only leave something to be desired at times.
So what do you think of the SEMA gears that are already in these? You've obviously taken a lot of these apart.
They are nearly bomb-proof. The one thing I will say, I mean this, as you know, came out of a Beta Projects Tactical AK, and I love the gun, and I love it because of this gearbox. I really like the gun itself, but the great thing about this gearbox is it is entirely stock. I mean, it really is. Although it's slotted for the SEMA blowback system, it doesn't use it. The gears in there are steel, and it is so rare these days that we see these actually broken. Yeah. It's, in the great scheme of things, it ain't a Sistema, but to be perfectly honest, I'd have 5 of these before I had a single Sistema gearbox, because I know that when I put this in a gun, properly set up, it'll work, and it will keep on working, and it will keep on working. Sistemas are fantastic, but lovely engineering, a little bit excitable. It's a bit like Formula 1 cars. You wouldn't want to use it for a daily commute.
Yeah. And when something goes wrong, it goes wrong.
Always a good idea to remove all the screws. You'll find that if you leave one at the front of the gearbox and then try and leave it apart, you just end up making an arse of yourself on YouTube. Yeah. So we will ease the gearbox front open. And the downside of the version 3 box is there is no convenient little hole at the back to catch the spring guide. So you've basically got to gently prise it apart until you
Pro tip is holding
everything.
Yeah.
And then before you do anything else,
out.
Release the spring guide. You've now taken the tension off, and we can lift that shell off, and you can see the typical Chinese grease.
Too much.
Well, it's not so much that it's too much, Jai, it's just it's bright in green.
Yeah.
And I just look at that and I go, what?
The Hulk sneezed in it. That's it.
Actually, the way I'm feeling at the moment, I may have sneezed in it, to be perfectly honest with you.
You can't tell Frenchie's feeling a little under the weather.
Right, so we run our calipers across that and we are seeing 703, so that bearing set should go in. Yep. Just as well, and this whole thing would fall flat in its face. Right, so in order to replace the gear set, what we're going to have to do is strip everything out of the gearbox, which is relatively easy to do. So, spring and guide,
yep.
They come out. Grab yourself a small screwdriver. That's the trigger in there, 2-piece trigger with 1 spring, and you really don't want it going anywhere. So release the tension on the tappet spring, and pop that out. The thing that bounced was purely one of the bushes from the original gearbox that came out. Put that aside, and we are going to remove the gears. So that's our bevel gear out. Remove the anti-reverse latch because we have one. Interestingly, it sticks directly on there. It did leave its spring behind. I'll stick that onto the motor as well for the time being.
Good way to keep your stuff together. Stick it to the motor.
It's a really, really bad way to
do that. We're only kidding.
Excuse me. And take that out. And that's us removed the original gear set. Now they're absolutely mint, obviously, because this is a new gun straight off the wall. And again, we've got tons of grease now. Because of the nature of this thing, we are not going to need nearly as much grease. So the next thing I'm going to do is just clean this up briefly. So, okay, right, we've taken out all the bits that we want to change or are going to have to, so we're left with the gearbox with this fantastic green gunk in it. So we'll repairer's friend, the oily rag, and just get rid of the bulk of that. It doesn't need to be perfectly clean. If you're feeling compulsive about it, by all means go for it, but we're just getting rid of the worst of it, because the other thing is the way that the Modify stuff works. This is now frankly irrelevant. It's all in the wrong place. We'll clean up the outside of the box when we're done.
Notice the gears we've taken out are all individual components, and the one that we're putting in, the Modify one, like I said, is held in with this nice piece of steel bracket, which is neat because everything's held together and it's much easier to put back in there, and everything of course is spaced correctly. Modify do precision engineering, which is pretty awesome. Like,
yes,
it's a bit overkill for an AG, but if you want to spend the money on getting your gun running absolutely bomb-proof, then
going back to something I just mentioned there, Sistema, I mean seriously, I know the PTW stuff and all that's all meant to be all singing and all dancing. A little bit of grease on this. It comes with an anti-reverse latch. I advise you to use it because A, it's good, and B, it's got a useful little screw head on the top of it, which will become vital shortly. Right, so The reason it becomes vital is we need to put that in and we need to get it out of the way. Now hopefully my ham-fisted fingers will allow me to do this without using a screwdriver, because it does want to dive. But all we need to do, and it is genuinely a case of all we need to do, is line up 3 sets of bearings in the holes, push it home, and if I let go of that anti-reverse latch, it will hopefully stay in place, and that's it. That is genuinely as easy as it needs to be.
Yep. No fiddling with single gears, trying to hold everything together with 6 fingers and
6 hands that I don't have. So, as I said, there's a little screw, slot head screw on that one. It just makes it that little bit easier just to turn it out of the way, and we can now turn the gear set through and position the chip on the sector in the right place so that it's going to pick the tappet up when we put the gearbox back together. So, done. Right, the other thing that Jai's brought us to play with is one of the half steel tooth Modify pistons. So let's chuck that in.
Can you explain to the viewers why
it's half toothed?
Yeah.
It's just to deal with the test, the stress is put on the piston. When a piston gets picked up, and we can use the original sector gear. The sector gear is sitting, you see it like that. Sector gear sits roughly about there. As it comes round, it picks up. That one's got the first tooth missed just to try and speed things up, and it will then rack along there until the end. I've missed that by 1, but you get the idea. As that turns off, the piston now comes forward under spring power, and the reason for putting the steel teeth at this end of the piston is because that's where the maximum stress is created, because that's the point at which your spring is at its maximum compression. All it wants to do from about this point on until it's released is shoot forward to the far end of the cylinder. So strengthening that is a compromise between doing a full teeth are falling out. You can do full steel. I've always been a little bit suspicious of it because I work on the principle that piston, even though the modified pistons are not massively cheap, a piston's a relatively cheap piece of kit, it's a relatively cheap component, and let's say that costs £10, $20, whatever. I would rather have that fail than £60 worth of gears.
Yeah.
So pistons are pistons. Now, the fun bit, let's see if we can get this to come off. In theory, it should just unscrew. In practice, knowing the way these things are built, it's never going to be quite that simple. Because there's a metal block in there, and all it wants to do is turn.
Yeah.
And all it's going to do at the moment is turn. I'm going to have to actually jam that with something. See if we can get some leverage on it. Problem we've got here is inside this piston, and I'm not sure if you can see this, right at the top there's a metal block. Rather than just a nut or some other fixing, there's actually a metal block which is the same diameter as the inside of the piston. But that's fine, but as soon as I start turning the screw, that block also wants to turn with the screw, which means that unless we can secure it, it's not going to unscrew. I mean, obviously the principle's dead straightforward. There's a screw there, you're going to take that out.
Yeah.
In practice, nah, we may end up slapping a different piston head on just for laughs, and also because we could actually waste an inordinate amount of time on this. But I think I've got it. Cool. Manufacturer who was best for this was actually Marui. Getting their piston heads off at times was nothing genuinely short of a nightmare. Fabulous pistons, absolutely bomb-proof. And of course that's now not going to come out.
Also, they made it round as well.
Oh, they made it round. Although it's square in the centre, I'll wager you in the SEMA factory someone has got this really nice tool that's square.
Yeah.
We don't.
And doesn't exist anywhere else.
And doesn't exist exactly anywhere else. Happy days. Happy days. So in theory, that should hop in there. And it is actually a little bit stiff, which in this case is in our favour, because obviously we want
We're taking it off again.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes without saying, if you are doing this job and you're thinking of maybe changing piston heads and what have you, now's the time to do it. Because you're seldom going to take your gun into as few bits as you have done at the moment.
So I hear a lot of guys favouring keeping the original piston head to keep the air seal nice and tight. Do you find the same thing? Or?
It's a funny one with Chinese guns because, I mean, yeah, basically there's no, that's unused. It's not a component I've got big problems with in Chinese guns, so I'm not going to just say to you, yeah, because spend more money on your gun. Why?
Yeah.
It's not going to improve it massively. At the moment, yeah, you would think that using the various components again is going to give you what you had before, and the gearbox is pretty efficient, so yeah. And if you really want to spend the money on it, go for it. But gun upgrading doesn't need to be stupid expensive. Right, I'm just topping up the silicone seal around the edge of that. Wipe it off the face of the gear, the piston that doesn't need to be there. It doesn't need to be huge amounts. But of preference, I actually use the moly disulfide on the side of the gear.
Yeah.
Just because it's running in metal. Again, these things are made of nylon compounds that are almost entirely self-lubricating, so you don't need huge amounts. It just looks really manky against the weight of the piston.
Manky, of course, is a Scottish technical term for
filthy.
dirty. Yeah.
My apologies to our international listeners and viewers.
So that's a new word for you guys, vocabulary, manky.
Bit on the rack is not a bad idea, because if nothing else it will transfer up the sector gear very quickly, and that's where you want it. So we've now taken a really attractive new piston and made it look quite filthy, but who cares, you're not going to see it anyway, it goes in. Right, let me just clean some of this off my fingers, Jack, and I had an instance with a customer recently, and they'd been doing an upgrade to the gun, had a problem, and we did ask him, have you done X? And what we were asking was, have you? X equals checking the compression. Right, so you put your piston in and push it down.
Yeah.
That requires a fair bit of force. Now, moreover, I deliberately left the air nozzle in place. You could have removed that and said, right, because that will give you a purer. But that's just not wanting to go. So we know we've got a good air seal on that.
If you're putting a new piston head on there and you're unsure of compression, that's always a good test for that. Before you put your gearbox back together again and find out, oh, there's no air. My gun's shooting 50 feet per second. And
lack of compression, you're getting 8 million rounds a second because the piston is moving wholly freely, but frankly nothing's happening. Right, the only other thing we need to do is get a bit messy again, and I'm just going to apply a bit of grease around the edges here.
It's always my favourite part, applying the lube.
Yes, you had to go there, didn't you?
I did.
You did.
If you follow us on Facebook, then you'll know I always have to go there.
I've known you long enough to know that you always have to go there. Right. Thing is, you don't need to use huge amounts of lubricant. If you're ever in doubt as to how much lube to use, and I don't mean that in a Jai Fraser sort of how much lube to use, have a look at what people like Marui and others put inside their guns. The Chinese guns are not a good example. They do tend to really go for it. Marui use very little lubricant, and their guns will keep going for years and years and years and years. So
yeah, we like Marui.
We like Marui quite a lot. And your tappet spring, put that back on. I want that to lie flat. Yes.
Are you not better putting your trigger spring back before you do that?
Trigger hasn't actually gone anywhere.
Alright.
It's lifted, but trust me, it will.
Yeah.
It's sitting kinked. It's just the way it's sitting. It's one of the downsides of these things. Now, damn it. I'll try not to swear at this. I can in fact leave this until after we've put the top end back in, and frankly I think I'm going to in this case. So that kind of has to go in bottom of the tappet first. It is a wee bit of a, because what you have to do is click it round the trigger. It just wants to get in the way and make sure the piston is sitting in the groove, which it now is. That's cool. We're there. As I said, get the tappet spring back in, which is actually a bit of a nightmare on this one. Yeah, much easier on version 2s, so I'm just going to have to go there. In, make sure your cylinder head's sitting square. There are 2 pins cast into the gearbox, and they secure the cylinder head so it doesn't go flying off the gun. Excuse me. So, got a gear set in. Trigger hasn't gone anywhere yet. Fingers crossed. I have to say on this gun, for the UK, I would normally change the spring at this point as well, because these do tend to be a bit powerful. But for what we're doing, we don't need it. in theory. Okay, so reassembly, as they say, is a reverse of, or rather, assembly is a reverse of disassembly. And once again, you're going to need about 8 fingers. Hold that all together. Down. And with a quick flick, one of the great things about these gear sets, Jai, is, as you said, because it sits on a frame, when you put the top half of the gearbox back in place, you are not juggling all these things that are all trying to go in different directions. So that's actually gone on really good. The only thing we need to do, and you might have missed it just there, was a quick tweak on the anti-reverse latch so that it was sitting vertically, and then press down, pull the trigger once, and that caused the second half, the rear part of the trigger mech to kick straight into place where it should be. And the box should now be, although I've not yet put the screws back in, back together. As you were saying about the compression, testing that, see once you put a gear set in, especially on a version 3, just get in there and make sure that things move. That's stiff because it is now actually trying to compress the spring, because of how we put it in. If the gears don't move, generally something's not right. So
get it open again, find out.
At this point you can go and open another can of Coke or whatever it is that amuses you, because I'm just going to start throwing screws back into the gearbox, and this is frankly quite boring.
Yeah, cool, we'll get the screws back in and then we'll show you how to get it back in the gun. Well, Frenchie's modifying the rest of the gun. I'll show you some of the parts that they have in stock. Lots of modified stuff. Now that's not the only thing in stock as well. There's some RA Tech parts as well for the WE guns, Action Army for your VSRs, all sorts of types of upgrades. This is Duncan here, this is one of the other technicians. He's always busy cussing and doing all sorts of things to guns. Keeping customers happy, that's all they're doing. There's some additional parts. These aren't necessarily upgrade parts, they're just parts to decorate your gun with. And there's also some tools here, some valves as well for the gas pistols that they have in stock. Hop units, more element gear sets, full range. There's even springs there as well. You can order them off the website, or you can actually send your gun here, ask the technicians here what you want to be done, and they'll do it for you. And they'll obviously add the labour cost on there. But really good way to modify your gun if you don't know what you're doing, or if you do know what you're doing, there's plenty of parts here just to get there. Alright, we'll go back to the gun and see how Frenchie's getting on.